Hi everybody and welcome to an Ageoffantasy Skirmish Battle Reports. The four companions and their orc shaman ally wandered through mountain halls and passages, and finally they reached an exit leading them in to a valley. Not a green valley with live flowers and animals, but a valley shrouded in darkness, with ruins and long abandoned houses in an eerie silence. The air was thick with the smell of death, and they wondered who could live in this isolated part of Teniras. Across the valley, they noticed the entrance to a castle, and at the same time a disturbing howling breaks the silence. They prepare to face the evil behind this cursed valley, as well as the unspeakable horrors in the Red Cave. Once again, we have our group of heroes with Galtrin the Knight. He is motivated and prowler, and he has a great weapon. Raymond the Swordsman with a chest wound and hand weapon. Haleth the Elf Archer with hand weapon and great bow and the ability Crazed. And Faywin the Elf Sorceress. She's a wizard. She has bitter rivalry and she is a herbalist now. She's armed with a spear. And then we also have the orc shaman. He's a wizard and he's armed with hand weapon. All of them with a tough value of 3. The special abilities and injuries of the group have been earned along the 3 previous battles in this quest. And once again, they face the undead necromancer. He has a tough value of 3, and he's a wizard and armed with hand weapon. And he has teamed up with a vampire lord. He's furious, has a tough value of 3, and he has insatiable hunger that gives him and friendly units within 12 inches 1 extra attack in melee when charging. They also have 3 skeleton archers with bows. One of them is a sergeant, and they have cursed ammo. And 3 skeleton warriors, again with hand weapons and a sergeant. And finally a werewolf armed with vicious bite, strider and scout. All of them are undead, which means they don't make morale tests the same way as the living. Our heroes will deploy in player section B, and the undead forces will deploy in section A. And here's a top view of the battlefield. This is a classic duel mission with 3 objectives. The 3 skulls here are all positioned in the central part of the battlefield. Each objective gives 2 victory points to whoever controls it at the end of turn 4. And the undead will activate first in this battle, and the werewolf is the first one to move. He rushes in cover behind this rock. Now we'll see who will activate first of the heroes. And the orc shaman will be the first one to activate. He moves in cover behind the ruined building, and from here he tries to cast the spell Evil Gaze at Faywin and Haleth. He needs a 3, and that's a success. And that means that next time they are shot at, they will get the ability Stealth. The skeleton warriors rush on the other side of the ruined building. They don't have any ranged weapons and they are out of charge range. Faywin activates next. She has known to be aggressive on several occasions, and she now rushes to a position where she can see the skeleton warriors. And from here, she tries to cast the spell Quench. That will succeed with a 4. And she is successful. So now the skeleton warriors will take 7 hits, all of them with normal defense. And they have a defense of 5. 7 defense rolls here, and only 1 of them is blocked. That means 6 hits going through, and that will remove 2 skeleton warriors immediately and leave the sergeant behind with 4 wounds. And that will be more than difficult for him to avoid being knocked out. He will need a roll of 1 on the wound chart to avoid it. So let's see. And with a 4, he is, and the entire unit, knocked out of the game by Faewyn. Now Faewyn has attracted the attention of the undead necromancer. He rushes forward and positions himself within 6 inches of the elven sorceress. And from here he can cast Spectral Wind, needing a 3. And he is successful. So now Faewyn will get 3 hits with AP2. And that means that she will need 6s to defend. And one of the undead necromancer's spectral wind spells is blocked, but 2 is going through, and now she is down to only 1 wound left. Galtrin immediately reacts. He needs to get closer to Faewyn to help protecting her. He cannot do anything further this round, but he is better positioned for the next. Next up, the skeleton archers. They move in cover behind this rock and they fire their cursed ammo, ignoring any kind of cover against Haleth. So they need 5s, and the sergeant with the yellow die only needs a 4 to hit. So one of them hits, the other fails. So Haleth will have to defend 1 cursed arrow. It's AP nothing, but still he fails his defense roll and he takes 1 wound. And Haleth doesn't waste his time, he immediately fires back with his great bow. He needs 4s to hit. So he hits 1 shot, and that's an AP1 weapon, so the skeletons will need a 6 to defend. And that means 1 skeleton leaves the unit. The Vampire Lord moves down the stairs. He rushes close to the necromancer. He doesn't have any ranged weapons, but he is more than deadly in close combat. Raymond activates and seeks cover in the ruined building. He has a chest wound, which basically means he needs to defend on a roll of 6, pretty much anything that comes against him. And that concludes the first round of this battle. Faewyn jumped into battle and removed an entire unit of skeleton warriors, but she exposed herself and the necromancer wounded her with 2 wounds. Let's see what happens in round number 2. The Vampire Lord is the first one to activate and he charges against Galtrin. Unfortunately for Galtrin, he is a beast when he charges. He is furious and he also has insatiable hunger. And that means 5 attacks hitting on 3s. And he hits each and every one of them with his great weapon. And the great weapon is an AP3. So Galtrin will need 6s to defend. And that will be close to impossible for Galtrin to achieve, but he tries. So let's see how his defense roll turns out here. 2 6s at least, so that means 3 hits, but it is enough to take him down. But he is within 6 inches of Faewyn, and with the Herbalist ability, a friendly unit can roll a 6 for each hit, and then he will ignore the wound. So he has a chance now to roll further 6s to avoid the wounds. But no 6s this time. He will take 3 wounds, and that will take him down. And now a roll on the wound chart will decide what happens. And that's a 4, so he is stunned, but he is also in a very exposed position, close to the vampire and the necromancer. Luckily, Faewyn is nearby, and she tries to cast her Quench spell on the Vampire Lord, and the Necromancer tries to block it. So they will roll at the same time, and she needs a 4 to succeed, and the Necromancer needs to roll higher to block it. But none of them succeeds, and the spell doesn't work. Instead, she charges the Vampire Lord with her spear. She has 3 attacks, and she's hitting on 3s. It's an AP1 weapon. 3 attacks coming up. And she hits 2 of them. So now the Vampire Lord will need a defense roll of 4. And he fails both of them, so he takes 2 wounds now. That's not enough to take him down, and he will be able to fight back, but he has already fought once, so he is fatigued. And that means 3 attacks, but he needs 6s to hit. And even though he is fatigued, he manages to hit back once. And that's a great weapon with AP 3, so Faewyn will need a defense roll of 6. And she doesn't, and that is very bad for her, because she is already wounded with 2 wounds. And she now takes her 3rd wound, and that means she goes down. Her aggressive style could prove to be fatal, and it is. With a total of 8 on the wound chart, she goes down and is knocked out and removed from the game. That's a heavy loss for the group of heroes. But things are about to get a lot worse. The Necromancer activates and he charges against Galtrin, who is stunned on the ground, and he takes him out as well. Haleth decides what to do. He could shoot at the Necromancer or the Vampire Lord. Instead, he decides to charge against the Vampire Lord. He is crazed, which gives him 1 more attack when charging. That's a total of 4 attacks with his hand weapon. And he hits with a quality of 4. So 4 attacks, hitting on 4. And that is not the best roll here. Only 1 attack hits the Vampire Lord, and the hand weapon is AP nothing, so he will defend with a 3. Let's see if he's able to defend. If not, he will go down. But he makes his defense roll, and no hits this time from Haleth. Again, the Vampire Lord can fight back, needing 6s because he is now fatigued. And 3 rolls, and again he manages to hit back with his great weapon. And Haleth cannot defend his heavy blow, and he takes an additional wound for a total of 2 wounds now. The unit of skeleton archers move to the center of the battlefield, and they claim the objective here. They can see Raymond inside the ruined building, and they fire 2 cursed arrows against him, hitting on 5s. And 1 cursed arrow hits the target. Raymond will have to defend on a 6 because of his chest wound. He is very fragile. And he fails, so the cursed arrow flies against him through the wall and hits him. 1 wound for Raymond. The Orc Shaman moves. He tries to get as far away as possible from the werewolf and as close as possible to the skeleton archers. From this position, he can see the archers and he can try his spell Burst. And he hits the spell with a 3. But that is a misfire, and no spell this time. The werewolf activates, and with the shaman further away now, it is still out of charge range, but it moves closer. And Raymond can't hide in the ruins forever. He has to do something. He is the weakest of the heroes, but still he charges against the mighty vampire lord. Raymond has a hand weapon and he has 3 attacks, but he needs 5s to hit. And he hits once. It's an AP nothing weapon, so the vampire lord will defend on a 3. Otherwise he will go down, and he fails his defense roll. And that means Raymond just took the vampire lord down. He will have to roll on the wound chart now. He took his 3rd wound, he goes down. Let's see the wound chart roll. That will be exciting. And he rolls a 4, and that is just enough to keep him on the battlefield. He is stunned and he is vulnerable now, but he is still in the game. The undead are in the best position on the battlefield. They have claimed 2 objectives now, and they have pushed the heroes back. And there is a heavy battle surrounding the 3rd objective. But the vampire lord unexpectedly went down at the end here with a hit from Raymond. Let's see how things turn out in the 3rd round. The undead will activate first, but there is a lot of thinking to do first. They could activate the vampire lord and get him back on his feet. But on the other hand, the initiative will be the heroes. Otherwise, the necromancer could activate first. He could try to cast a spell, and then he could also charge, potentially taking out both Haleth and Raymond. But if he fails, the vampire lord will be left on the ground to take out easily. The werewolf could activate activate first and try to remove the shaman. What will it be? The necromancer decides to cast Spectral Wind against Haleth, and the orc shaman will try to block the spell. And the necromancer fails, otherwise the shaman succeeded, so no spell. Instead, the necromancer charges against Haleth. He has 3 attacks with his hand weapon, and he is hitting on 4s. And he hits twice with his hand weapon. 2 attacks, and Haleth must block them, otherwise he will be knocked down. And he has a defense value of 5. But he fails both of them. No attacks blocked, and he is hit twice, and that takes him to 4 wounds. And he goes down. And it will be most important that he doesn't leave Raymond alone on the battlefield with the shaman now. So a roll on the wound chart, and with a 5, that is too much. He is knocked out of the game by the necromancer. So the necromancer's plan partly worked, but now Raymond is still around. And of course, Raymond's activation will be to charge the vampire lord, and since he's already stunned, he will be immediately taken out of the game. And now Raymond and the necromancer will fight around the 3rd objective. The 2 skeleton archers stay where they are close to the central objective, and they fire their arrows against the orc shaman. The regular skeleton hits, and the sergeant misses. 1 cursed arrow against the shaman. He has a defense of 5. And he fails to block the arrow and takes 1 wound. The orc shaman tries to cast the burst spell once again. He will need a 3. And if he hits, and he does this time, each model in a unit will take 1 hit on a dice roll of 4, 5, or 6. So for each skeleton, a die roll. And a 4 and a 6 here was not good, so we'll re-roll here, and a 5. So 2 hits, 1 for each skeleton archer. And that means one is automatically removed, and the other one takes a wound and goes down. He will have to roll on the wound chart now. So let's see if the shaman can take him out. No, he is stunned, so he is still in the game. And what will the shaman do? He moves closer, charges him, and takes him out. But he also claims the objective, and he also is within charge range of the werewolf now. So he prepares himself for the unavoidable. The werewolf activates and charges him. 4 attacks with vicious bite, hitting on a 3. And he hits with 3 of his bites. It's an AP nothing weapon, but the shaman will need 5s to defend anyway. And he fails every single bite and takes 3 more wounds, and that takes him to 4. And of course, he goes down. He took the chance by attacking the skeletons, but he paid the price. With a roll of 1, he is stunned and still in the game. Now, both the heroes and the undead are below half strength at the end of round 3. So the heroes will make morale tests and the undead will have to roll and see if they take any hits. And that could be decisive. And first the shaman. And since he is stunned, he will automatically fail the morale test and he is removed from the battle. Next up, the werewolf. The undead will roll a die for each unit or each tough value, and with a roll of 1 or 2 they will take a wound. And with this roll it means that the werewolf will take 2 wounds now and only 1 left. Now the necromancer. He also takes 1 wound and he still has 2 left. And finally now it's up to Raymond. He is alone on the battlefield surrounded by the undead. He has a quality of 5. And with a roll of 6, he passes the morale test and he's ready to fight in the 4th round. Raymond activates first, and he charges the werewolf instead of the necromancer. He might have a better chance to take down the werewolf. 3 attacks with his hand weapon, needing 5s. And he hits once. Still AP nothing, and the werewolf has a defense of 4. But it fails to block Raymond's attack, and 1 hit is just enough to take it down with 3 wounds. Can he take it even further and remove it from the game? A roll on the wound chart will decide. And with a roll of 6, Raymond actually takes down the werewolf with his blow here. Crazy stuff going on right now. Raymond is alone. He is facing a werewolf and a necromancer, but he is still standing. Again, the necromancer has several choices of what to do here. His spells have a short range, so he decides to charge Raymond with his hand weapon. He moves in with 3 attacks and he is hitting on 4s. So now the battle and the fate of our group of heroes will be decided here in the showdown between the necromancer and Raymond in the center of the battlefield surrounding the middle objective. The necromancer attacks. And he hits with only 1 of his attacks, but Raymond will need a 6 to defend, and he fails. So now he takes an additional wound, but he's still on his feet. He can fight back, but he is fatigued, So he will need a 6 to hit the Necromancer back. It's not impossible. And we will re-roll that one. And that is a 6. So he hits once with his hand weapon, but the Necromancer easily blocks the hit. And that is the end of the round. We still have to make morale tests though. The Undead Necromancer first. He can take himself out, but he doesn't. He's still on the battlefield. And now Raymond, with a quality of 5, and he also decides to stay. And who knows how this battle could have turned out with one more round. But this was the end of round 4, and that means an Undead victory. The Undead controls 2 objectives, giving them 4 victory points, and the central objective is contested by both. And that leaves Raymond alone on the battlefield with the Necromancer. The fate of him and his friends are not decided yet, so we will see in the future. Thanks a lot for watching this battle report. I hope you'll join me for future bad reps.